Mark here with Technologists for the Public Good. We're trying something new here at TPG, a new format for engaging with the leaders and the doers across the public interest tech field. This is our first attempt at that new format, so bear with us as we pilot something new and iron out the kinks. I'm talking with Michael Boyce today, formerly the head of the Department of Homeland Security's AI Corps. Michael has had a storied career throughout government, starting out as a refugee officer and ending up leading a team of AI experts in one of the federal government's most complex agencies. We spend our time talking about his career trajectory, his reflections on public service, and asking him some exit interview questions. If you're a TPG member, you'll have the opportunity to ask Michael some questions yourself. A few weeks after this recording goes live, we'll be hosting a live Q&A with Michael for TPG members. Members also get access to the full interview with added comments and hot takes. For more information, take a look at the description of this recording. You can also head to publicgood.tech for more information about Technologists for the public good. With all that said, let's get into it. Well, how are you doing?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's been fun.
Well, I've got a bunch of different questions that I can ask. I guess the first one, I want to talk about your transition out of government. That's maybe the big sort of piece that I want to get to. But before I get to that, I think that it's important to talk about how you got into government in the first place, the journey you had through government. We don't have to go through it in excruciating detail, but I would love to just get a sense of that. So what was the sort of first, what was the first reason that you decided to go into public service work?
I had to, Mark. I was required to by
force.
I was required to by I think by law. So when I graduated college, I promised myself that I would do whatever taught me the most Arabic. And what that meant was I would do a program at the University of Maryland called the National Security Education Program, where I would get a master's degree at the University of Maryland. Mm-hmm. And I would spend 1 year in College Park and then 1 year abroad. Actually, at the time, we thought it would be Damascus, but it was free and I had a stipend. But the requirement was that I had to do commensurate, I think at least 2 or 3 years of service in the federal government. Oh. Or make a good faith effort to. Oh, it was it was a great program. And so that was really what got me pretty much started.
Wow. Do you, why Arabic? What was the promise that you made to yourself to be
So, we said we wouldn't get into excruciating detail,
Sure.
but now we are.
Sure.
When I started in college...
This is just me being curious.
Yeah, when I started in college, I was going to study computer science and psychology, and my joke has been that had I just stuck with it, I'd be, on a yacht right now somewhere in the Mediterranean. And I got to college, and I kind of got tired of getting hazed. In high school, computer programming for me meant, I'd make some cool program that would solve some problem. And then I got to college, and computer science was big O notation and, make this Turing machine and Perl. Yeah. And all the parts about it that were fun and problem solving to me just became I don't know. It became homework. Right. Whereas programming for me had never been homework. So it was still Iraq wartime when I was in college. Yeah. And what I really didn't want to do. Well, here, let me tell you this. I had a tough French teacher in high school. Mm-hmm. Again, excruciating detail. I apologize. Yeah. Uh-huh. And then, so I had a language requirement in college, and I went in my first day to a French class thinking, okay, I'll just do my 1 year and knock it out. Yeah. And then it was one of those dreams where you walk into a class and you have homework, a test you had. And literally the French teacher in French, my French was not very good, was kind of berating me in French for not having finished the homework. And it was the first week of school, and I was a freshman, and I hadn't gone onto the online site to figure out what the course reading was. Oh my God. And I said, I'm not doing French. And so I was what language is the most different than French I could think of? And there was different options, but I thought Arabic was at least relevant. Yeah. And then I found that I really liked it.
Yeah.
And so I actually spent a semester abroad in Jordan, and actually ended up going out 2 summers as well through different like research fellowships, and worked for like the UN actually in Damascus in their resettlement department with Iraqi refugees. So I had this amazing experience with I had this amazing experience with kind of Arabic and Arabic studies, but what I always thought was me focusing on that, and my Arabic had gotten passable. It had gotten like, strongly taxi conversational, I'd say, with some ability to like read the news. But I really wanted to get good where I could have like real conversations with people.
Yeah.
And so that's why I focused on it.
And then you went into the deep end where you were not just having conversations, but like legal conversations, difficult conversations with like a wide range of people.
Well, that's right. I mean, it's actually very interesting. So you're talking about, so my first job, the job that I got was as a refugee officer. So I go to different countries and interview refugees.
Different dialects, different accents.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the proudest moments in my life truly in my life,
wow.
when I had this like young woman who I was interviewing, and she said she was from Aleppo. And I said, "Are you sure you're not from Deir ez-Zor?" Because I interviewed so many Syrians that I'd heard their little words. She's like, "Oh yeah, well, I am from Aleppo, but my mom is from that area." And I was like, "Got him."
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty. That moment brings a smile on my face.
That's awesome.
I mean, it wasn't. It was practical. Honestly, it was more for me than it was for anybody else. Because to tell you the truth, Mark, when I was doing the interviews, we were given interpreters. And when I did the refugee interviews, I had to basically type almost verbatim notes of what I was saying on the computer as I was speaking. And so the challenge with that when you're speaking in a foreign language is I'd been trained a little bit in interpretation, but I still had an accent, and you would have a refugee come into the room.
Sure.
All the signals are this is going to be an American who doesn't speak Arabic.
Yeah.
And then I would start speaking to them usually with an Egyptian dialect. And they were just like, the cultural, it just messed up all the rapport. It just like messed up all the rapport. Plus, I found it incredibly hard to type in English as I was speaking in Arabic. Just like, I'm not so kind of fluent that there's no cognitive load in going between the two.
Were you typing in Arabic then?
No. I mean, because the notes had to be read by like a supervisor. So I was typing in English, but I would be speaking in Arabic. So I did a couple of interviews in Arabic, but I did a decent number fully in Arabic. But actually, the way I normally did them was I would speak in English, have the interpreter interpret it while I was typing, and then they just wouldn't interpret back. Because what would happen is when they interpret it back, I would start immediately typing in English, and then it was like hearing like a lag of your brain kind of, and so it was like too much. So I just said, look, I'm gonna speak in English, you're gonna interpret, and then you're just not gonna interpret back. And after a while, all the interpreters had sort of talked to each other, so I would get new interpreters who would just know how to work with me when it was kind of fun. It was pretty fun.
That's pretty fun.
It was pretty fun, but in some ways, it was more for me, I think, than the other way around, where compared to other interviews I did where I didn't speak the language, I definitely connected and felt like I understood the stories, understood the nuance, understood when like people were trying to be humorous in these like really intense conversations. The interviews were pretty regimented.
Sure.
And I think I probably eliminated some of the cultural, like there probably were a few moments where I lost some of the cultural nuance.
Sure, like missed there's
little things
or something.
Yeah, or there was in Syria there was interesting things about when a difference between a raid and a checkpoint and some nuances with terminology there, but ultimately, and I think that's probably brings me to civic tech, I didn't think the biggest problem was intercultural knowledge. My biggest takeaway was the color pen I was using could potentially delay a case by months if I used the wrong one. And, that didn't happen all the time, but it was possible.
Yeah.
And so that, anyway, I don't mean to transition too hard, but
I think
it was fun.
Let's keep going down that path. Like, what was sort of the transition piece that brought you towards the civic tech field? Like, you already had this, like, tech background from wanting to go into computer science and such, and then now you're in the refugee officer field. And what was the transition point to technology in government.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny, Mark. So you said non-excruciating detail, but I'll give it to you. So we had a template that we called the assessment. It was a Word doc template, and we were going through training, and I remember talking with a friend, basically saying there's like little things that it wouldn't do well. The first literal thing was like quick type shortcuts. We oftentimes would have to write these acronyms, and so we just started modifying the assessment to type out certain acronyms that would come up. You know, in the refugee context, you have well-founded fear. So instead you type WFF, and it just turns into well-founded fear.
Yeah.
But as I went to my first trips, we had to generate these forms based on the assessment, and there was no automatic way of doing that. And so really where I started was I just started, basically I opened up Visual Basic for applications inside of Word and started to write code to more and more automate my own work. And because it was a Word template, I could just start sending that Word template to my colleagues who, we were under pretty intense time pressure. But anyway, that was really what snowballed me. I would say actually my big break, and you know something about this, was, so my little template was starting to get noticed because it was starting to save people time and people were starting to use it, and there was questions of, and to be fair, I had good bosses who saw that it was helpful and were trying to encourage it. My big break was, in many ways, one day we had a staff meeting, and the Refugee Affairs deputy came in, and she normally, I mean, she was lovely, but she normally just didn't attend the staff meeting. She was like 3 or 4 levels above me.
Sure.
But she happened to come in that day, and the only seat she came in a couple minutes late, and the only seat free was one next to me. And she mentioned that they said her name was Mary Margaret, and they said, Mary Margaret, do you have any updates? And she said, oh, I'm meeting with some tech whizzes from the White House. And then when the meeting ended, she turned to me and she goes, Michael, do you have any wish list for the tech whizzes? And I said, Mary Margaret, can I just attend the meeting? And that was me actually going up way too many levels.
Yeah.
Like, that was actually the first, I ended up going to the meeting in the USCIS front office, and I didn't even realize what that was. Like, I thought a front office was like the secretary's like off. Like, I didn't know, or like the administrative assistant's I didn't know what a front office was.
Sure.
But she said, let me go back, let me check. And she added me to the meeting. And that's when many of future colleagues at USDS were all there.
Wow.
And I just did what I always did, which was talk my mouth off. And then people saw, oh, we found the weak chain, like the weak link in the chain. But then I also had good USDS bosses who didn't stop me, didn't say, hey, why don't we talk about this separately?
I mean, that's amazing.
It was great.
I don't know. I don't think I had heard that part of the story that you just sort of were like, can I just go to this meeting?
Totally.
So you moved into USDS from there.
Right. That's
did a bunch of work. Still on refugee.
Focused on asylum.
Asylum in this case, yeah.
Yeah. And we had a chance also to go to a bunch of offices and to really talk to people, which was a really nice experience there.
I don't know if I ever asked you this, but given your time in USDS then and your sort of transition into it, what were some of the skills that you had to flex, had to build? You obviously brought a wealth of subject matter expertise about the immigration system, RAO's side of it all in particular. But what were some of the pieces that like you were picking up or had to like build up as part of that?
That's a great question. I mean, at that point, I had done some tech projects, but I was really focused from the program side. And I think that was my first time really approaching it from a consultant's perspective, where I'm an outside force. And clearly there was a little bit of a conflict of interest there because I didn't know the asylum program quite as well. I was from the space, but the actual people, I've never been in the asylum program. I was in this sort of sister program to it that had always had a sort of a sweet kind of frenemy sort of dynamic to it. And so I was coming in as a consultant, and I think it was a lot of that. It was about, okay, we're this outside party. We need to build trust with people. We need to actually figure out where our value adds. And that was never really a concern for me in previous work because the value add was clear. At the end of the day, I was an officer. I was able to determine which cases came in.
Sure.
And then everything I did on top of that was gravy.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting. I mean, I've been working with USDS and in my own technical background a bit. So I had some sense of the kind of trinity of product manager, design, engineers, how to work with them. I've always gotten along well with engineers because I have a technical background.
Yeah.
Designers, I joke, drive me crazy, but I've sipped the Kool-Aid over time.
Yeah.
And then product managers make sense because that's oftentimes been kind of the space broadly that I inhabit.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't think that was quite as big of a transition. But it was that kind of outside, how do you influence when you're not directly in the organization piece that I had to think about a lot.
Did you find yourself changing your perspective on government, given that you had moved into this more like consulting type of position and outside of the specific track of like refugee officer, sort of like moving forward?
Yes, although it was less dramatic than I thought, probably because I ended up. So my intention with USDS was to work on asylum for a while and then do some other projects so I'd have a broader view.
Yeah.
And I ended up going back to USCIS into refugee and asylum programs. I never got that broader view until later when I left again.
Yeah.
So I think, it was definitely a larger perspective, and certainly through the USDS community, I learned a lot more about other types of work. But it wasn't really until I went back to USCIS and then left again that I feel like my view of government overall started to change in a more material way.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I want to get to that point. I know that there was sort of like, well, fill in the timeline for me, because I kind of have a maybe murky timeline. From refugee officer to USDS, working largely on asylum.
Asylum was the main work that I did, absolutely.
But timeline-wise, you went back into USCIS.
That's right.
To build out what was the name of the team?
It was called IDEA, Innovation and Design for Enhanced Adjudication, but it was really sort of the programmatic technology and data and design team.
That was the team that was basically doing what you had started, which was like building better technology to improve the refugee and asylum.
Yeah, I think the interesting dynamic there was, and like many federal agencies, was that we weren't actually in charge of the development teams. The development teams was centralized in the Office of Information Technology, which I was not in, because I went back to refugee and asylum programs.
Yeah.
So, in sort of standard government terminology, I built out the team of like the product owners.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting balance, because on one hand, I was there to sort of elevate the refugee and asylum program's internal capacity. But on the other hand, I believe really deeply in empowered product teams.
It sounds like the structure that you had was sort of like, no, this is purpose-built. These are people that understand the system, understand the technology, understand what you were trying to do. Did you also have means of like not just testing with that group of people, but also like engaging with others?
It's so funny, Mark, because in many ways what we had was just wildly ideal. And in fact, it was sort of...
Wildly ideal. I love that.
And maybe the wildly is actually a useful word there, because it almost became too much at a point. So by the time I had come there, they had a mainframe modernization that they had to do. And they were basically under the gun.
Like congressionally mandated or something?
No, it was CIO mandated, but there was a huge bill, basically. It was a clear, like, if we do not do this by this time, we have to spend all of this extra money on a mainframe system.
Yeah.
When USCIS, to be honest, because of its particular, I can get into details of USCIS, but the way that U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services is funded was really flexible, actually, for doing big IT projects.
Totally.
And had a pretty strong and progressive IT culture.
Yeah.
Compared to virtually every other agency.
Yeah.
And there was some really progressive leadership as well, too. I worked really closely with a man who's now at NASA, Matt Dosberg, who was great, and
he's
just
at NASA now.
He's a great. He gives me Mark. He gives free. He loves giving tours of Goddard. I'm tired of them now. I've done so many, but it's pretty fun to see. And then you had Mark Schwartz, who was the CIO, who was very progressive. There's a bunch of good forces. They had brought in Pivotal Labs, which I guess now is VMware, Broadcom, or something like that.
Yeah.
But they were a very progressive, lean, human-centered, extreme programming team.
Yeah.
And they brought in this product manager who had this sort of, he was very charismatic, extremely smart, had this almost kind of cosmic connection to the head of the asylum program. They just got along in this deep way.
Yeah.
And so he really had license. He basically said, look, if you want me to fix this problem for you, to get this system done, And to avoid this charge and to have your program not fall over, you need to let me work the way I want to work. And we owe him a lot of credit for that because basically it sort of removed a lot of those barriers. I think that you said in the N400. Because a lot of what I hear when you say that too, Mark, is like, sure, those barriers exist. I think that removed a lot of the barriers. So a lot of what we built was built off of it. But no, I mean, we had a very, very dynamic user interview rotation, user interview schedule. The team had pretty free access to users. You hear complaints about, oh, we can't get enough users.
Sure.
But that sort of thing, there was a very dynamic development environment. They could push to prod on the same day. As the team would mature, we had to have these conversations where we were being told we were like the bad guys because the team actually had such an easy time pushing to prod that they like would sometimes push like pretty significant bugs into prod.
Yeah.
And so as the team grew, we said we can't do the like we're a 12-person team cowboy thing anymore, and then we were being told we're waterfall, blah 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 blah. So it's very interesting to watch that dynamic where we almost started from the very opposite end. I mean, it really felt like a real startup that you were empowering, and the product teams were very, very empowered. In some ways, they had more power than the business side by the time that I sort of like took over properly. And I don't think they felt that way, but compared to any other federal government team, I mean, it was truly
That's
unique.
amazing. So you went to IDEA, had this incredible experience. Next step in my mind is that you went to OMB. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, and it was through like a fellowship program?
Yeah, it was through the White House Leadership Development Program, which is a program that still exists for civil servants to go to the White House or other center of government agencies, basically the General Service Administration, Office of Personnel Management, and work for a year there.
That's amazing. What kind of work did you do while you were there?
So I had a great time at OMB. At first, it was very disorienting because I went from running a pretty big team to being a staffer, right? I was an independent contributor. I think the biggest moment was I met a couple of folks who said, oh, we're working on AI. We have like an informal AI team. And that was, October of 2022. So ChatGPT came out in November of 2022, if I remember correctly. And it was funny because Congress in 2020 had required OMB in the AI and Government Act to write a memo governing AI usage in federal agencies. And OMB just hadn't taken it up. There was a lot of other things to do.
Sure.
But for a bunch of different reasons I won't get into totally, like this little group is trying to get this memo out. And there's a bunch of reasons that folks didn't want the memo to go out. There's always sort of, the requirement had sort of been met in spirit and all these different arguments. And then ChatGPT came out. And it's sort of it was amazing to watch, like, agencies wouldn't take meetings with us on AI, like, no one kind of cared about it. Like, the executives, they were being nice to us, but you could tell it wasn't their priority. It was still, like, zero trust world was a lot of what people were talking about.
Yeah.
And then it escalated, and there was some, like, bigger policy things, and it seemed like, okay, we are going to really get this memo out, but it's going to be a little watered down. And then I went on a great vacation to Guatemala, and when I flew back, by then, of the two people who kind of invited me into their team, one had gone over the Office of Science and Technology policy to work on AI policy, and then one had become the OMB director for artificial intelligence. And so Conrad, who then later became the head of the AI Safety Institute, or acting head, messages me and goes, Michael, all the other priorities are gone. There's going to be an executive order. They want to do it incredibly quickly. And what ideas do you have? And so then we basically worked for the next couple of months on this executive order. And I mean, Conrad had a much bigger role in that than me. I was really focused on like AI and government. And we got some sections in, some little things I was quite proud of getting into the executive order. But it was just an interesting, to me, almost the interesting piece I took about it was just, even as the executive order is going on, frankly, at OMB, you're so used to people kind of half ignoring OMB or trying to work around it, that you're still kind of assuming that like most of the things you're going to say, like no one's ever going to do.
Yeah.
Or they'll kind of have to and say they did it, and it's not really clear if they ever did it. And we were talking to agencies about different ideas, and there's still like a little bit of an aspect of like, maybe if we just get it this way, we'll sort of be able to not have to focus on AI and keep back to our real priorities.
Sure.
But then when the executive order hit, I felt like it switched. It really went from, this is not a priority, but we'll humor these crazy people, to like this is like what everyone's talking about in the federal government, what everyone's focused on. And it was really interesting to see that tenor from my perspective.
Yeah. Do you think it's because of the executive order and that's like the power of EOs, or was it just like it was well timed and ChatGPT was coming up and?
I think it was a combination of those forces. I mean, I think certainly also industry, just like waiting for their moment to push on it. I think the creation of the CIOs was helpful, and that now all these people could get the chief AI officers.
I didn't know
because the executive order. Sorry, well, I don't know how to pronounce it, but anyway, or KO, I don't know.
Sure.
But this idea of a chief AI officer, and just now he is a new shiny object that aspiring civil servants can try to grab. I mean, there's a lot of different forces that I think made it. People were being tasked to do all sorts of different things, and it was a long executive order with a lot of different requirements.
Yeah.
And it also really the secretaries were put on the spot to make real AI leadership there. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of different forces that suddenly made it. And then, of course, the timing with the world.
Well, so let's go back to the AI piece of this, because you go into OMB, this executive order happens, AI is now what everyone wants to talk about. How long did you stay at OMB working on AI-related things before you transitioned into your next role, which was the DHS AI Core?
That's right. So it was I was there a little bit under a year. Mm-hmm. Then I did the budget side, the foreign assistance work for 9 months. Mm-hmm. And then I went back to DHS where I ran the AI Core.
Okay. What was the impetus of going to that work? Like, were you the first? Like, did it get announced and then you were there? Was it sort of announced first? They were looking for a lead. You came in. Obviously, Eric Heisen was the CIO of DHS at the time, and you had worked with him prior in your past life.
The AI Core was announced, I think, it was germinated as an idea in December.
Yeah.
Of whatever that was, 23. Really announced in February of 24, and then I was brought on late April of 24.
Okay.
And so I think that, yes, they had been looking for someone to lead it.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, at that time, I guess I hadn't applied quite as rigorously for my next steps because, frankly, I didn't actually leave USCIS. I still actually had a job being kept warm, essentially, for me back at USCIS.
Okay.
So I could have just gone back into my old job.
Yeah.
And I was talking about some other opportunities at USCIS. And then, frankly, I was pretty interested in AI. I unsurprisingly, my basic take on generative AI is, don't make me comment on the impact of it on society, but I think it is a useful tool for operations in large agencies.
Sure. Yeah.
And I would go to the bank on saying that. And I was really excited to think about how that could apply to some of the challenges that other technology paradigms I just didn't think quite had the oomph to be able to solve.
Yeah.
And so I was keeping my eye out for opportunities. And then basically, yeah, you're right. They were looking for someone to lead this new team of 50 AI experts to help hire them, to help give them mojo, all these sort of things. And you know what? I kind of done that. I built a team from zero to... there was a couple folks there, but I built a team from a very small number to 30, 40 plus the 100 dotted line technologists. And Eric knew that I knew how to do that. Mm-hmm. And so he talked to David Lerner, who was DHS's CTO, and I think recommended me very strongly, and they asked me to come in late April.
That's amazing. Yeah. And it's so interesting because it's a team of AI experts, and you at the time were maybe I would call an AI enthusiast.
That's right.
But no PhD.
No PhD. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit of imposter syndrome that I still have about it. I also think that, I think I've broadly gotten over it.
Yeah, I mean.
But I have little moments, since leaving I have little moments of that too, where my value add was the intersection of that with how governments actually work.
Totally.
So, we can get into various hot takes, but generative AI less is a data problem than a cloud problem, for example. Not to say the two aren't important, but I actually think it's much more of a cloud issue than it is a data issue.
Yeah.
And so there's a bunch of different things like that I thought I was a value add on. And then it is so new in many ways in how it's applied to organizations that I don't feel totally out of my element talking about it and using it. I also would say my biggest hobby continues to be coding. And so I've been using the systems a lot. I hadn't been working in a company that was doing it full time.
Sure.
But I've been spending a good amount of time with it. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I think civic tech also shows how you can clearly have real impact in technology without a PhD in the subject.
Totally.
And so I don't know if that particular element in the AI core space was as much where my imposter syndrome comes from.
Sure.
But it's a great question.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the way that I think about it, and I had a different but similar experience as the deputy for the USDS team at DHS, where, people on that team had incredible careers, very deep knowledge in areas that I had only just begun to learn, but the value that you add as a head of a team or part of the management of a team isn't that you know how to do every single thing that your team knows how to do. It's that you can help clear their blockers, help them work together with other people, help them orient themselves to the environment around them. So I think it makes a ton of sense why, you ended up in that position. And then you all got to work. I mean, you were hiring like crazy. You built a huge team and a great team full of real experts, full of PhDs, as well as other folks, other credentials. And then there was the transition period from one administration to the next. What was that like for you and for that team?
It was very disruptive because I had been through Trump 1. I'm a big believer in a neutral civil service.
Yeah.
And I think if you believe in democracy, it has to work regardless of who's in power and regardless of what your politics are. Obviously, DHS was going to be a controversial and hot space for a second Trump administration.
Of course, yeah.
But, especially, if we're, just to be frank, we're talking about ICE probably here.
Mm-hmm.
And I had great relationships with ICE colleagues. She's left now, but I knew the CIO very well. I knew I don't know if he must have the title now, but I knew essentially their de facto chief AI officer very, very well. We'd worked together for years on border integration. I'd done great projects. I think about one project that I didn't mention earlier where we literally did an integration with an ICE system. And in doing that integration, it reduced the amount of time people spend in immigration detention by like 4 days or 3 or 4 days. And we could count it.
Wow.
We could count it because we knew how long the handoff was in a certain process. And then when we turned on the integration, we could see how it was. And then as we added features to automate that handoff process, we could see the time decrease.
Wow.
And so I knew them well. And the one thing I'll say about ICE is they don't want Department of Homeland Security headquarters in their business as they have all this work. Sure. So I felt like we knew how to manage that and then to help them in lots of strategic ways. And we're doing some other great projects with them,
Sure.
Counting, child sexual abuse material, helping with some sort of law enforcement investigations.
Sure.
So some of the more controversial areas of DHS, I felt ready, I felt prepared for. I also said it's Department of Homeland Security and AI. I mean, what could be more aligned with the incoming administration's priorities?
Sure.
And to jump to the next question, what I didn't expect was how much of the attention would be on the civil service.
Yeah.
I mean, not as a means to an end, but in an end of its own. Yeah. And I think that was the piece that really surprised me. And, for civic tech folks who were following it, right, there's this idea of probationary new federal employees generally. And I had 40 new probationary employees. And what they were talking about was really potentially terminating all of them. And so as a manager of 40 new employees who are all basically asking me,
will I still have a job?
Will I still have a job? And of course, I had no information about that.
Totally.
I'd be hearing rumors from my bosses or other people in the world, but those rumors were totally unhelpful.
Totally.
And but towards the end of my time, I kept running my team. You guys are trying to get information from me. I understand that. I respect that.
Yeah.
But I do want to just level set. Every time I've tried to opine on this, I've been wrong.
Right.
And so it does make me a little bit worried trying to give you the information I'm hearing because it's literally been wrong so many times that I worry about just sort of the emotional and cognitive dissonance of you trying to get information from your boss that consistently turns out to be incorrect. And on one hand, wanting to be supportive and saying it, but on the other hand, knowing you're making life decisions based on this information that I don't believe.
Sure. God. And so at a certain point, you make the decision to leave. You made the decision sort of not as part of one of the fork deals, and you weren't terminated by a riff. You decided, I'm going to get out of here. What was going through your mind as you made that decision and then also shortly afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe the immediate things that came up I won't get into. There were some more personal, some more like detailed things there.
Yeah.
basically it kept building and building. And I wanted to stay. I mean, I truly wanted to stay.
Yeah.
Up until the very end, I was also talking about potentially details, especially if my team was going to be downsized or changed, could I get detailed to another part of the government? I would still like to go back into federal service. And in fact, it's crazy to say it, I would still go back into the right position under the current administration. But it became very clear that the AI core, which we had delivered, we had built this like DHS's first secure chatbot that I guess now has been released to 275,000 people. We had an amazing on-site in DC. We went to the White House, and we went out to NASA, and we met with the secretary, and there was a lot of great momentum coming into it. And another big challenge was just the kind of the whooshing sound of, not only did it slow down and we lost some of our top cover, but it went as far to the other side as humanly possible.
Right.
And so
demoralizing.
It was demoralizing. It was, you didn't want to come to work anymore. You didn't want to be there. And so I think, to be honest, the Machiavellian part of me says if my only goal was to rise the ranks of the federal service, probably stay is a pretty good option. It's about to get cleared out. There's going to be a lot of opportunities. Sure. There's a hiring freeze that we're going to want to hire internally. But it just was deeply miserable. And so, and the only part of it that was great was my team, but we were spending so much time focused on the back office administration that the fun parts of having this dynamic team that have creativity and all these great ideas was totally sapped from the process.
Wow.
So, and I'm still in touch with many of the folks, but that I think was sort of what was going through my mind to answer the question.
Okay. What were some of the things that you were working on before you departed? You mentioned the chatbot, for instance.
Well, the chatbot, I think, I did want to talk about the chatbot for a second, because talking to a civic tech audience, I think there's a lot of strong emotions about generative AI.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, I'm at US Digital Response as their generative AI lead. And it's sort of interesting, the relationship between generative AI and I guess the civic tech community, such as it exists, such as defined.
Yeah.
Because, there's lots of different opinions and perspectives, and I don't want to put words in people's mouths. I think one of the concerns from folks is we spent all this time trying to fix the websites, and now we aren't done yet.
Yeah.
And now they want us to do AI.
Yeah.
And on one hand, I'm very sympathetic to that. I spent a huge part of my life building one of those websites, namely the asylum application form.
Yeah.
On the other hand, when we released this internal DHS chatbot, which was the first one that people could use for work, right? We'd let people put only public information to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
We never let you say, okay, your internal work memos, your internal work documents, non-sensitive PII. We were doing I had a great user researcher on the team. We were doing pretty rigorous both user interviews and also surveys, like monthly surveys, where we get a pretty high response rate. And the reality was people loved it. My favorite metric that we had, people talk about time savings, and I don't really believe time savings or efficiency metrics other than as kind of order of magnitude baselining. But my favorite metric we had in our survey was we would list common workplace applications, so like Teams, Outlook, SharePoint, Google, Wikipedia.
Sure.
We also listed our internal travel system to make sure that we were better than at least one system, and we would have them stack rank how useful these are to your daily life. And by the time that I had left, our survey respondents had our internal DHS chat above Google search and Wikipedia.
Wow.
And it was catching up to SharePoint and Excel.
Wow.
And I don't know, I think internal federal government employees can be pretty critical about bad software when you're asking them. And I don't think that was just sympathy points.
Sure.
And you would see the comments where people would have, and I think part of it too is that these systems certainly have their flaws when it comes to sort of factual information type retrieval scenarios. But what people were using often for was helping with writing. And the federal government, you are writing a lot.
Yeah.
And you're not writing out of an artistic,
Sure.
The writing you produce in the federal government is rarely of an artistic or creative nature.
Right.
It is about moving the ball down the field 2 yards.
Yeah.
And the goal is to complete the assignment so that you can hit the next hurdle you have to jump.
Yeah.
And I think in a world where that's so much, to totally mix metaphors. And so, don't try to make me say more specific football metaphors. I think there was a strong response from that. And the question you need to ask yourself is can these things coexist? What's the nature of this? It also felt particularly, that was one of the main projects we were able to sort of keep going with all of the disruptions.
Yeah.
But in this world where no one's giving federal government employees anything, it felt nice to give them a few tools that made their work a little bit easier and their work a little bit more manageable throughout the day.
Mm. After you left, and now in reflection, what were some of the biggest personal or professional losses?
Oh, I mean, Mark, your identity is being a civil servant. Right? Mm-hmm. When you spend your whole life as a civil servant, it becomes who you are and how you view yourself.
Yeah.
I feel lucky that U.S. Digital Response picked me up and was giving me a really great empowered role. But for someone who's been career, it's sort of who I am. And so that's very displacing. Yeah. I really love the folks on my team and many of my colleagues. Yeah. And maybe I'll even be a little bit from like a more selfish perspective. Sure. You know, there's like a cachet to being in the government. You know, it's I don't know. When I go to cocktail parties, my many cocktail parties I go to, and they say, "What do I do?" I'm very proud of working for U.S. Digital Response, but most people haven't heard of it. Sure. Yeah. And there's like a real, when you say I work for the government of California, or I work for the Department of Homeland Security, there's like a kind of people understand or have an idea of what you do that is a sort of way of associating yourself in the world. And so, so in addition to the relationships I lost and sort of the identity I created, there's also kind of just how I position myself in relation to other people, at least in the professional sense. Sure. Obviously. How long were you a civil servant for? 11 years. Wow. Well, thank you for your service. Thanks, you, Mark. How about any surprising gains? Oh, there's so many gains to it. I mean, look, most of my adult life, I had been in a world where, if you've been listening to this and my exquisite detail, I'm clearly not someone who lacks ideas or thoughts. And you really have to check yourself when you're in a civil servant role in ways that were sort of surprising for me when I first started. And so that's been really exciting. I think being able to sort of just being able to associate, being able to work with other people, being able to have views that you can say without worrying about, will my bosses get upset with me? Will this prevent me from getting other opportunities? Sure. Is this not, am I not upholding kind of my oath or my professional best practices? Right. And then I did have a kind of a dark joke, which was that the destruction of the civil service was really great for my social life. There was a lot of commiserating and just a lot of people reaching out and connecting. Yeah, I mean, I see that happening. There's a lot of folks that are, because of what's going on, connecting with each other. It's somber, of course, but it's also community building in its own way. What was it like for you to search for what was next? Like, what were you thinking about? Were you like, forget about this whole government thing, I'm through with it? Or did you really want to stay in the field? Or what was that process like to even just figure out what was next? So I didn't think I'd be leaving as quickly as I did. And I was fine financially. Yeah. But also just hadn't been prepared for it. Yeah. And I think one thing I want to say is that there's a sort of politeness of job searching I see in civic tech, where folks have to kind of pretend that they're not worried about money as they're going through it. And again, in the grand scheme of things, I don't have kids. I don't have, I have friends who've had to leave very unexpectedly urban rift who have children and big responsibilities or more debt than I do. Or these other sort of things. And so it's really hard to imagine that. But even for me, just the basic thing of I have a mortgage. And I have only so long that I have, liquid assets that I can pay my mortgage. And do I have to, the real estate market isn't great right now. These little concerns that I think that folks kind of bottle up in this kind of politeness. And also when you're searching for a job too, I think another sort of dark joke is it's sort of like dating. Yeah. Well, you have to play a little bit hard to get, almost like you don't need the job, but you secretly are a little bit desperate too. Yeah. And then of course, a lot of the best connections are when you meet someone word of mouth, but you can always go to the apps too, right? Yeah. And so there's but it's a little bit harder to, more needle in the haystack. Sure. And it's the exact same thing where, you can find jobs through your network, or you can go onto your LinkedIn algorithm. I mean, so I saw a lot of actually sort of similarity in that. In my particular case, there was two jobs. I applied for this job and I applied for another job, and both I thought I'd be very excited to have. And so, and I was lucky that I got one of them. I didn't get the other. And I hadn't really announced that I had left beyond to sort of my friends and immediate. I didn't do a big LinkedIn thing or anything like that. And honestly, the reason for that was I think I'm fortunate enough in my career that had I done that, a bunch of people would have reached out to help or to offer. And I just didn't feel like I was in a place where I could accept that help because I thought I had a chance at these two different jobs.
Right.
Had I not gotten either of them, I think I would have really been a little bit more like, okay, what do I do? What's my next step? Where do I want to go from here? Much more strongly, and I would have been, hopefully I would have been much more aggressive.
Yeah.
The suddenness of it, though, and the unexpectedness of it, I think, didn't also mean that I got to enjoy my unemployment time as much as I would have liked to.
How much time were you?
It was probably about again, I feel very fortunate, but probably about a month and a half.
Sure.
That I was unemployed.
Sure. And yeah, of course, there's the privilege of being able to say, like, enjoying unemployment time versus, like, the stress of it.
Totally.
I have to imagine there was still the stress because you didn't leave under, like, nice circumstances, right? It was
No, I didn't leave under great circumstances. And yeah, I mean, it's stress. I mean, you don't know you're going to have a job until you get it. I think some people, maybe they had a backstop or an organization that would have taken them back at any time that had a good financial situation. There were some of those kind of situations that I've seen people have because I observed that with some of the folks on my team who were incredibly qualified and had great relationships with some of their former employers.
Yeah.
But, I didn't really have that. And so there is that kind of nagging, like, it's not a great market. It's like, and again, I had very neat jobs, very, a very nice position in civic tech. Yeah. And unfortunately, it did mean I was able to get this U.S. digital response position. Yeah. But yeah, it's like some of those big life things where I think, especially in civic tech, we try to be sort of falsely polite about it. And it is kind of hard for folks. And what I always tell when folks are leaving or sort of between jobs is like, hey, look, like, it sounds like you're figuring it out, but if you need to ask for help, like, please don't feel awkward about it because it is a bit more lonely and kind of disassociating than even someone who's pretty well positioned might appreciate.
I get that. I mean, we see this in the TPG community quite a bit. Obviously, there's a ton of people in the field that are hurting right now. They're looking for work right now. And I think that there are some people who are doing their searching a little bit more quietly. And then there's some people who are more open to asking for help or connecting with other people and everything in between, right? And I think that, I don't know, it's great to hear your own perspective and how you sort of thought through it all. Given where you are now, or the experience that you had particularly during the month and a half, how do you feel about your career moving forward?
I've always considered myself a fairly type A person without ambition. In the sense that I have discrete dreams of what I want to do.
Sure.
But I've never had this sense of, oh, I want this role or exactly this type of thing.
Sure.
And I want to be clear, I really respect that. I think it's very clarifying if someone can say, here are the 2 or 3 roles that I really want to have. And also you have sort of the confidence to be able to sort of express what your desires are. So for me, I saw this as just a great learning experience. I didn't know anything about state and local. I have heard great things about U.S. digital responses culture, all of which have truly come true. That's not just me being nice because they currently pay my salary, but truly all the great things people have said about USDR's culture and leadership and all sorts of things like that have all come true for me.
Wow. And
so I feel very fortunate from that perspective. And I'm learning a lot. I'm meeting with all sorts of great partners. I'm going to different spaces. And so I feel really fortunate. And in the course of my trajectory, I think I've really appreciated kind of being in the weeds and popping up to a bigger picture, being in the weeds, popping up to a bigger picture. And I do imagine that my next step, I would want to pop up to some sort of bigger picture angle on whatever it is that I'm doing, because that's been very meaningful for me. But also, if I find another great opportunity to learn as well somewhere else when it's time for me to move on, I'm sure I will be excited about that too. And that's, I think, more how I think about it than kind of a career trajectory of ladder climbing and more of sort of layering of different experiences is how I've sort of seen it.
I love that. Well, so you left government, and as the public, you were working for me. now that you're no longer working for me, I think it's only fair that I get to ask you some exit interview style
Okay, fair enough.
questions.
Fair enough, Mark.
To hear about your experience in my organization. What do you think about working for our company, our organization?
It's funny when people ask me about what it's like to work for the government and would you like it and is it too bureaucratic. My feeling about it is there's two types of folks who deal with the bureaucracy. One type of folk come in and they say, this is not for me. This is not how I want to be spending my time.
Sure.
There's too many blockers, there's too many barriers, too many interests. And that's fine. That's totally fine to know yourself, to know what you like to do. And I'm truly not ascribing moral fault, although I have my own opinion as someone who worked in it for a long time.
Sure.
I think there's another type of person who comes in and says, this is fascinating to unpack, has the opportunity to be able to do so in the little ways that they can, and finds that interesting. And then when eventually they achieve the goals that they set out for themselves, there's an incredible reward of solving a big puzzle and creating real impact in a way that is very immediate and very dramatic.
Yeah.
And so I guess my feeling working in it is it's kind of all true. All the things that they say about it, the good and the bad, are kind of all true at the same time.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just about the things that I cared about in it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your candor on that. What were the best and worst aspects of your job?
The best aspects and best moments of my job were working when I was really simpatico with a few people. I've mentioned a couple of them even in this conversation. And we were really like brain melding, solving a problem together in a way that felt very flow or whatever cliches you want to use there. Those are truly, truly great moments. The worst aspects, it's going to sound a little bit harsh, was cowardice.
Whoa.
There were some moments where you could truly see people making decisions based on cowardice.
Wow.
And self-preservation situations where there actually wasn't that much of a downside beyond some reputational impact in the eyes of a few other people. And you would see that sometimes in really important situations. And those were the ones that really stuck with me quite negatively.
Yeah. Wow. Goddamn. Cowardice.
Yeah.
I love that. That's strong, but it rings true with my own experience of like how people are making decisions.
Yeah, and I think it is important to be able to recognize the situation like what's going on right now in the federal government, but also remember that there was a lot of things that were not perfect about it and did need real, I'll use the word systemic change.
Yeah.
And there's a way of doing it that isn't cruel and malintended. And I just hope in the reaction to it that folks can sort of separate the two concepts.
Yeah, I get that. Do you feel like you had all the resources you needed to succeed?
No, but I also think I never would have. Like, it's never possible to have all the resources. So I think that's an important distinction to make. And I actually think one of the characters, which I'm not necessarily great at, and there are lots of places where you do need to demand more resources and demand more resources urgently.
Yeah.
And so I do not want to minimize that.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
But it is interesting. I see the hallmark of a really good senior leader as someone who knows when they need to ask for more resources and when they need to look in their own internal processes and figure out how to use their resources better and prioritize their resources better. And I got to a point in my career where I would sometimes see folks who had the title of senior leader, but would basically talk about how they couldn't do anything without more resources.
Yeah.
And I saw that over time as a mark of latent inexperience or immaturity into their own leadership development process.
Right, where like the first thing that a new leader would come in is like, say, I need a bigger budget.
Or often in other cases they'd kind of work their way into a position. Maybe they had a similar job in a different agency or different organization. They come in and they've kind of been stewed in the environment of here are all the unchanging practices that we must do. And then now new requirements are coming in. The response is, well, I can't change anything I'm currently doing. I just need more. Like it was actually the new people I feel like oftentimes were more open to the idea that they need to change their internal processes than immediately start playing political games to ask for more budget.
Right.
Whereas the longer term people would have had all these agreements and relationships and commitments and really relationships where they knew if they were to upset people's cheese, these people who they developed relationships with would be upset with them.
Sure.
And so then the only natural thing was to complain about not having the staffing or the resources.
Wow.
But it's hard, right? I mean, and this was, I think, when I was on the budget side too, though. I'm talking about this in an abstract sense.
Sure.
But it does sometimes mean reorgs, and that means potentially firings, or at the very least transfers. And so I'm talking about it in sort of an abstract way, but there's...
It affects lives.
Yeah, but there's real meat to it as well.
Sure,
too,
yeah. Is there anything that we could have done to have prevented you from leaving?
Here, let's talk about this in a real sense of this downsizing. Let us assume that downsizing, we have decided that we need to do it, which happens. It's interesting. I was talking to folks at the UK, where because of the nature of their political system, reorgs happen fairly frequently.
Oh, okay.
And so they would go through these reorg processes, but there was like a clarity of planning and purpose that would allow people to make decisions about their lives cleaner. Right? If they said, we are going to do a 10% reduction in force across these units. We expect this to happen in 3 months. Or like we will do a month and a half long planning phase, then we will announce the units, then it will happen 3 months later, and then it will be done.
Yeah.
You know, we would certainly been upset.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would have been as motivated to leave. I might have been motivated to see it through.
Okay.
And then to say, okay, it's done. They wanted to make an organizational change. Now we know it's over. Now we can get back to work.
It was more so the chaotic element.
It was the chaos, lack of communication, the arbitrariness of it, like literally things changing overnight.
Wow.
I mean, the week after I left, previously they had basically said you didn't have to come into the office if there wasn't enough space.
Yeah.
And we were really upholding that. We were staffing every single seat. And the week after I left, I heard that they said, nope, actually just everyone comes in.
No matter how much space
There
there is.
is. And we'll just, you know, you can sit at the cafeterias, you can, you know, double up in cubes and steal extra chairs from managers' offices and stuff like that.
Wow.
So it was that, I think, that really builds up over time, where as a manager, you have to kind of explain that to folks.
Yeah.
And there's no way to sort of at a certain point rationalize, like, you should still be excited or optimistic or care about your job, or we just have to get through this one period. It's an organizational decision.
Sure.
But once we move past it, we'll be able to focus on work and all the great things we're doing. You couldn't say that because you didn't know that to be true.
What improvements could we have made to make the workplace better, more enjoyable?
Here's a spicy civic tech take. So it's going to U.S. digital response. The amount of tools that I get to use are truly changing it. But I want to talk about why we don't use it. A little bit of it is budget, or a big bit of it is budget, and that's worth discussing. But actually, I would say the other piece of it is data privacy.
Oh, interesting.
So we talk about the ATO process, and certainly there's ways of improving these things, and the authority to operate process, and how you get systems into federal government.
Yeah.
But I didn't talk about another part of my time at OMB. I actually worked on a program called FedRAMP, the Federal Risk Authorization and Management Program, which is one of the big cloud certifications, kind of how tools get approved for federal government use. And what I learned from that experience is really a lot of just the basic logic of cybersecurity is the data that we are collecting inside of a government boundary or outside of a government boundary? And when you come from it from that angle, it could seem a little bit esoteric. But one person's, you know, authorization requirements is another person's data privacy and leak prevention work.
Sure.
And it really was, and the core motivating thing in the federal government was about that, is like, are you keeping this into a boundary where, by the way, we can't just go off, oh, well, I like this company, I think they're probably doing a good job with my data. It was not a trust, it was just a verify culture.
Yeah.
And I was talking with the state the other day where they were talking about some of the the personal information they had.
Yeah.
And we were talking about data leak concerns, and the data was not someone's social security number, but did this person join the military?
Sure.
And I think that the state was being extra cautious and responsible. But we had a little moment where we were saying, let's imagine that this data got leaked.
Yeah.
What would the impact be?
Yeah.
And there is a real risk-reward kind of scenario
risk assessment that you can
of that. And I think that's really where the tension comes from the tools, is really that balancing of how much do we need to verify the privacy of data and certain controls versus can we give tools people to better do their jobs?
Right.
It's truly complicated. It's truly complicated.
Yeah, I get that.
But I think just sort of bemoaning it as kind of bureaucracy, there is a piece of that. But I think a lot of it is actually the countervailing force is data privacy, which is another value that people hold pretty rightly, quite highly.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting. One of the projects that, as you know, we worked on quite a bit was trying to get Google tools approved for use at Homeland Security. Spent years and years and years working on that. And I think that finally it's approved now. But there was a lot of discussion about exactly what kind of information would be stored on these systems. What I found fascinating was how much we didn't talk about the shadow IT that was already being used by so many people across the enterprise. How many people were already using Google tools to move data around or, collaborate on things when it was unapproved. And so I look at tool usage not just from the perspective of, is this helpful, but also like, what's the risk? Like, this is already happening, and what's the risk, and how do you reduce that risk?
It's so funny you mentioned that, because with generative AI, I think about that too, which is a lot of agencies were blocking ChatGPT when it first came out. And there is some good reason to do so. I mean, people would probably do some crazy things in ChatGPT, but I was against it. And one of my arguments was, you're actually not blocking generative AI.
Yeah.
And people say, what do you mean? And I said, we blocked Claude, we blocked ChatGPT, we blocked Gemini. And I said, have you blocked Google search?
Yeah.
Because the first response when I type into Google search is a generative AI response. And if you actually put a document into Google search and you say, rewrite this document in X, Y, or Z way, your top Google search response will be
the
rewritten document.
Wow.
Now, it's not as good an interface as a chat, but you can use it. And so the point I was trying to make to a lot of places was, you need to find a way to get these tools into people's hands.
Yeah.
And I think maybe the countervailing side of well-intentioned data privacy is shirking of responsibility.
Yeah.
Right? If maybe the bad bureaucracy story against the good bureaucracy story of protecting people's data, the bad bureaucracy story is, well, if I say it's not approved, then I don't have to be responsible if something goes wrong.
Right. It's not my responsibility if someone broke the rule.
Yeah. If someone goes to Google search and does a bunch of bad things in it,
yeah.
I mean, no one can fault me for not blocking Google search, and I won't be it won't be me on the hook.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that there's a whole conversation we could have too about like AI tools are inevitable versus like how to control it versus whatnot. But I think that's a conversation for another time, because I'm still asking you about these exit interview questions. What do you see as the biggest risk for our organization?
I think my belief is it's just politics. I think folks want to set up good structures and good systems, but my feeling is if the politics, in the end of the day, the politics will win out. And there's no amount of protection or structures you can set up to truly avoid the politics of the moment. Maybe those things add up over time, but the speed by which politics changes and affects the government, I think will always outpace the wasted time, the sort of the time it takes to have changes and improvements to the government impact the politics, vice versa. It's why I've always felt that you should be trying to make government work effectively and not so strategize about the next political cycle or the next set of political events. Because I think we're seeing it now. I know a lot of people did well-intentioned things to try to create some create some protections, and we're seeing how quickly they're getting blown out of the water.
Yeah.
And what I worry is in trying to do that and being sort of clever about that, they lost the opportunity to advance,
do other work,
to help people then.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting.
So the risk to me is politics, and that's how I've always sort of viewed. And it doesn't mean people should be breaking rules. People should have, but the rules shouldn't be tricks to prevent people you dislike or disagree with from being effective. The rules should be to help people do the thing that you think is good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I like that perspective of sort of like how much time are you spending protecting the future versus fixing the today, fixing the present. What advice would you leave for your team?
I think I've been talking with most of my team who are thinking about leaving or staying. I mean, there keeps being other shoes that are dropping even since I've left. what I've sort of said is you should make the best decision for yourself, and I'll support it. And don't worry about the broader pressures. If you like your job, you're doing good impact, keep doing it. A lot of what they're doing is making federal employees work easier and more streamlined and efficient. I know I did a bunch of work under Trump 1 that I was asked, how was it like working under Trump 1? And I basically said, look, if we hadn't done half the things we did on Trump 1, under Biden or whoever else, you wouldn't have had you can't start on January 21st and to do a big project.
Totally.
The groundwork needs to be laid. And so if folks are still enjoying their job, I think that they should stay. But if they're not enjoying their job, or they're not thinking they're driving impact, or they don't want to do the work that they're doing, or they can't for various reasons, they have to come back into offices that are too far away, or they can't support their families, then they should leave. And I think both decisions I truly do see as valid, all of the big politics of the moment aside.
Yeah, that makes sense. Last of these questions, what was most appealing to you for your new job?
Lots of people said great things, and all the great things they said basically all became true.
Right.
And then I wanted a place to learn. I thought I'd never really done state and local. I've done some work on benefits, but not nearly as much as I am now, and some other really key areas. I'm also kind of excited about a lot of the state capacity stuff, and I think there's really interesting ways that our organization plays into a lot of those conversations. And so, in addition to just the great culture and the great environment, the whole being treated like a human being part of my job, it's just been great to learn. It's been so fun.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's all I have for you, Michael.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Nice seeing you.
Yeah, good seeing you too. I know that we stayed a little bit longer, but but I really appreciate your time. Yeah. Huge thanks to Michael for his time and earnestness in our conversation. If you're interested in hearing more about Michael's journey or want to chat with him yourself, join as a TPG member today to get access to our live Q&A. You can find more information in the description of this recording, or head to publicgood.tech for more information on Technologists for the public good. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.